So I'd like to welcome everybody to join us. I'm coming from Nawagi and Wargamai lands in North Queensland. I'd like to acknowledge the past, present and emerging custodians of the land and thank them. Everybody that's joined us tonight, if you'd like to type in the chat room what lands you're coming from and acknowledge where you're from. And tonight we're joined by a few of my fellow farmers. So I've got Declan from Western Australia, Courtney from New South Wales, and Penny from no fixed address at the moment. Penny, I'll let you talk a bit more about that in just a minute. So I'll start with Courtney from New South Wales. If you can give a quick intro to yourself, the traditional owners of your lands, and a bit about your business.
Yeah, hi everyone, thanks for having me. So we're on Bangarang country near Berrigan, New South Wales. And my partner and I run Woodstock flour on Ian's family's farm, Woodstock. And we value add grain grown on the farm and produce flour, which we sell across Victoria and New South Wales. And we're slowly getting into the farming side of things ourselves too.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Courtney. And across to you, Declan.
Yeah, we're on Kaniang country in the Noongar Nation of WA. So we're in Harvey, so about an hour and a half southeast or south of Perth. We are on 14 acres here, and we use around 7 of them for diversified organically grown, not certified veggie production. And yeah, so we used to farm on a small scale, and we've in the last 2 years moved here and scaled up the farm and done all types of iterations of distribution, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
And Penny, if you want to give us a quick rundown, whereabouts you are at the moment, I guess.
So my name is Penny Cothy. We're myself and my husband, Paul McKinnon, are formerly of Karula Farm. We're currently farm sitting on Wiradjuri country in Dubbo, New South Wales. We sold our farm at the end of 2018, just as the book was coming into print. And we live on the road working around Australia with other farmers, and we've been to all sorts of places: Dairy Country, which is in South Australia, Ngunnawal, Boonwurrung, Twangarong, Meru, I can't even say that, Barrangi. It's a bit hard when you move around trying to work out where you are. So yeah, we just travel the country helping out other farmers, whatever that means, whether that's farm sitting, helping with infrastructure. So that's our new contribution to the food system.
And I'll give a quick rundown. So my wife, Leanne, and myself, we farm 140 acres on unceded Nawagi and Wargamai lands in North Queensland. We overlook Hinchinbrook Island, if folks are familiar with that part of the country, about halfway between Townsville and Cairns. And we breed, grow out and slaughter on farm summer-lad meat chickens. And we also do a little bit of sugarcane, so a perennial grass, in rotation with the poultry. All right, I'm sure the other panelists that are here with me this afternoon can't believe 2 years has passed since we penned Farming Democracy. I know from us there's been some pretty major changes since the book was published. But from the panelists that are with us, and I'll leave this to whoever wants to grab it first, but what's been the biggest thing that's changed for your farm? What's been your biggest learning since the book was published in the last 2 years?
I'll go. Yeah, I think for everyone, when there's dramatic change around you, it makes you kind of analyze where you are and what you're doing. And for us, we kind of, I guess when the book was released 2 years ago, we were on half an acre, and then we decided to scale up so we could do more cover cropping and move towards a more like reduce the inputs on the farm. And we moved, scaled up, COVID hit. We were just run ragged and pretty burnt out. And so we, rather than trying to do everything ourselves, decided to outsource the distribution and stop doing, I guess, consumer direct on our farm. And rather than that, we moved to using a local box system that actually works with local organic growers, and they do the distribution and the communication with the consumers and run the website. And then we do crop planning amongst all the farmers. And that way, you know, we've actually gained back weekends. We don't have to go to farmers markets anymore. And we are, like, quality of life wise, COVID, I think the shock, you know, shock can be a time of change. And I think for us, that was the biggest thing. Just realizing that there's different iterations of community, and it doesn't have to be, you know, this very individualistic farmer doing their job and this mighty force of one individual or couple. You know, we realized that there was a community within that distribution, and it's more of a cooperative model, and like solidarity within that support framework. And so, yeah, we found that it feels like we're a lot less vulnerable. If we have a crop failure, it doesn't feel like the end of the world. It doesn't feel like this really big personal, I guess, issue that we get caught up on. It's kind of, it's still not great, but it feels a little bit less coarse, I would say. And that's probably been the biggest thing for us.
You go, Courtney.
Yeah, I'll speak to this as well. We kind of had a similar, I don't know, kind of outsourcing direction as well. So COVID hit and we could no longer cross into Victoria. So we're kind of on the New South Wales Vic border, and we could no longer cross into Victoria without having to isolate on our way back. So that really forced us to, because most of our customers are in Victoria, it forced us to outsource our deliveries, which has been quite lovely because we get an extra day. And I don't know why we didn't prioritize it sooner. But otherwise, it's been, yeah, just realizing how fragile our distribution is. Like, it was very Victoria centric, which is our, you know, Melbourne is our closest major city, but Melbourne was also hardest hit by COVID restrictions, and a lot of our bakers really suffered. And it just made us think about, like, maybe diversifying. I mean, obviously we still need to support our hospitality sector in Melbourne, but as a business in New South Wales, we thought we need to try and, like, diversify our markets a little bit. And we've since established a community supported mill, so kind of based on the CSA model, and we're rolling that out in Melbourne and Canberra, and we're maybe looking into Sydney as well, because there seems to be a lot of interest there. So it's just, yeah, I think also coming off the back of a quite significant drought. So last year was beautiful weather-wise, but the 2 years prior to that, we really struggled on the farm. And at the time of writing Farming Democracy, we were very, like, focused on just value adding our own grain and, like, really supporting our own farm and, like, very single farm focused. But we've since started thinking about our flour mill as a service to other regenerative or organic or agroecological growers in the region. And it's like, we haven't actually done it so much yet. Well, we did buy some organic grain from local growers, but we're kind of thinking about now how we can build our mill in a way that supports wider landscape regeneration rather than just our single farm, because that puts a lot of pressure on our tiny little farm during times of drought and other weather events, I guess, as well.
And probably Penny's seen the largest changes, I guess, in the time. But if you want to give a quick summary from yourself, what's been your biggest learning, I guess, with the travels you've made in the last few years?
Yeah, so obviously our biggest change in the last 2 years is selling the farm. And if you've read the book, you'll see what we did, which was quite a mixed farming enterprise. So we farmed lamb and beef and pork and poultry and did some market gardening and a lot of value-added services. And our model was very much, at the time, farmer market driven. We chose to sell our farm with, I guess, getting some inspiration that we could actually be of help to other farmers in the regenerative space across Australia. And it's played out really well. And despite COVID and the bushfires and the floods and everything that everyone's been through the last 2 years. So I didn't actually count. I should have counted how many different farms we've worked on, but it would be more than a dozen and approaching probably 16 across the 2 years, normally spending up to a month at each farm. And that could be anything from helping them look after the farm if they wanted to take a break, or I should say needed to take a break, and you can all relate to that, to just helping build infrastructure and do projects that they couldn't have got to. So a lot of the properties that we work with are family owned, small scale, not always, but so the biggest change for us is, I guess, being on the road and using our skills rather than running our own farm. And for us, we feel that it's been an awesome way for us to contribute to the local food scene and to the regen farm community across Australia. Obviously, we haven't been everywhere and we haven't got to everyone, and that's impossible, but there's actually a lot of people out there doing what we're doing. You know, there's at the older end, there's the grey nomads, but there's also young people out there helping on farms. And it's been a fantastic learning experience for us, even though we're sort of going to these farms to help and to share knowledge, but just seeing different farming systems and changes to the way things have been, I guess, how people are being impacted over the last 2 years with all of these challenges. And, you know, I fully support what Declan and Courtney were saying in terms of real community building and so forth. But I'll talk more about that later, and Daniel, let you talk about what changes you've had.
All right. I guess a few of you folks have read the book pretty much just after or just before it went to print. We had one night where we had over 710 mil of rain. As a result of that, we lost about half of our growing birds that had 1.5 meters of water go through a paddock that was dry the next day. And we lost about 30% of our breeding stock in the months following that flood. All the browns and taipans, which we have many through here, pushed to the high ground because of the rain and then following up showers that followed about a month after that. So we lost 30% of our breeders, which was a massive impact for us. It took us nearly a year to get our breeding stock back to where it was. Completely changed our farm with regards to how we run our birds, where we run them, weather monitoring, and having high dry ground available absolutely all the time. But I guess good things that have happened, we were thinking about doing a CSA for many years, and I guess COVID gave us the nudge we needed, forced us to make some decisions that we'd been ruminating on a bit. So we launched our CSA in October of last year, and currently have opened our CSA round 2 for 2021. So that's been a fantastic, I guess, learning and development in our business. And I guess the other exciting thing we're doing is with getting some high dry ground on our farm, that was going to be kept just as open paddock and pasture. But for us and our observations with poultry, given the chance, they're in and amongst trees and undergrowth rather than what they'd be in an open paddock. So we're introducing a syntropics system on our highest and driest paddock, which is a bit like a permaculture food forest on steroids. Stacked enterprises with regards to light requirements and considering the plant life cycles, and absolute poultry heaven. So they're probably our biggest learnings and things that we've we've embarked on in the last few years since farming democracy came out. The next topic I was going to chat a little bit about was with regards to support of our communities in the challenging times we've had in at least the last 12 months and more for some of us as well. I'll talk very quickly about this one and then hand it over to Courtney, if that's okay. In terms of our support from the community, following the floods, it was fantastic. We had a lot of people checking in on us, people turning up at the farm as soon as the roads were open in gumboots and work clothes saying, what help do you need? What can we do to help? So that was absolutely heartwarming, helped us get through some really challenging times there. We had another summer-led grower that offered to send us pedigree genetics in eggs to try and rebuild our breeding stocks. So community support and support from the farming community and also support from our wider community, so our eaters and our neighbours and folks around us has been awesome. And with regards to COVID as well. So I'm not sure if Deck and Courtney experienced this as well, but when COVID first hit, we lost all of our restaurant and resort business, which was about 30% of what we did. But the month following that, our sales to mum and dads and couples and retired folks and whatever it may be, so just general sales to people at home, close on triple. So there was the initial first rush of people becoming a little bit nervous and I guess chasing more food sovereign products, and quite a few of those are stuck on. So for us, it's been good, and we've had great support with the launch of the CSA. Did you want to talk a bit more, Courtney, about how you found the support from your community within Vic and New South?
Yeah, following during the drought, our bakers in particular were really understanding of us running out of grain, and they were super generous in taking on. So we bought some grain from some other local organic growers, and it was different quality, it performed differently to how our grain would perform, and it was totally different to what they were used to, and yet they still kept buying this grain that we would mill for them. So that was really lovely that our close relationship with bakers really proved itself to be valuable in that time. And I mean, today we found out that one of our most supportive bakers is quite ill, and it really shook us for six. We have actually been through a lot together with these businesses, and to find out that one of them is quite unwell has thrown us and made me realize how a lot of our customers have actually become like family, as corny as that sounds, but it's we've been through so much over the last few years. And then with COVID, we got absolutely slammed in that first lockdown. And we'd also had our baby boy, Marlon, and it was the week after the birth of our son, we had shitloads of orders coming through, and we hadn't even checked our emails. And so we just had this backlog of orders, and it was, mostly panic buyers, but also a few loyal customers in there as well, because flour was one of those staple foods. And so that was, interesting, because we kind of were faced with this dilemma that all these people had paid for their flour, and we had these regular customers or businesses, and we didn't know how to meet our old customers and these new kind of panic buyers. So that's what kind of led us to start the community supported model, and that's been it's been picked up really well. It's going to be a slow process, but it's mostly everyone's been really supportive, and the idea is that if something like this happens again, we'll be able to support those customers that have pre-ordered, or they're subscribing, if you like. But it also encourages people to consume our whole crop rotation. So not everyone's just eating wheat, but we're eating rye and spelt and other grains like triticale or the heritage wheats that we're trialing, which is better for our farm too.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your community supported model that you've gone with?
Yeah, like we've only done our first season, and we're hoping to roll out the next one next month. But yeah, we're just trying to give flowers really expensive to post, and we live in a pretty rural area, and our immediate local community, they're pretty used to shopping at supermarkets, I guess. Even though they're mostly supportive of us, they're not used to baking with white flour, with whole grain flours, freshly milled. So the CSM was a way to kind of provide regular, affordable flowers to communities, mostly in capital cities, because that's where the distribution network is kind of geared to, obviously, but also in our local region around Albury. And we had a set, like each month it would change slightly, but customers would kind of get what they're given. But we've been flexible. If people really didn't like a particular flower, they could substitute it for something else. And we also provided some recipes as well to kind of ease them into baking with these new products that they might not be used to. And yeah, we're just, with this next iteration, we're just trying to work out how to structure it with, like, in terms of quantities and timing, and whether to keep providing recipes or not, just like working out where our energy is best spent, I guess.
Fantastic, thank you. And as well for you, Declan, so you guys have had a fair bit happen in the last few years with the change of farm, and I guess you're learning to deal with clay soils as well now, from what I see in your very thorough Instagram posts. But how do you guys go with support from your community, both support from the community to you and you guys supporting your community in these times?
Yeah, I guess I skimmed over before the biggest thing I learned last year, because we when COVID hit, that would have been March or so, and we'd been meaning to switch to 100% community supported agriculture model. Like, it had been an intention of ours when we started the farm, but we did baby steps. So when we first started, we had, I think, 15 members, and then we went up to 30, and then 50. We still did farmers markets and restaurants and sold a bit of stuff to wholesale. But yeah, when COVID hit, we realized, we were like, oh wow, we can, just the demand for the vegetable boxes, we were like, well, all of a sudden we realized we could just do a full CSA. So we tested the waters by just leaving our sign up form open. And we just knew how many members we needed to make the same income as when we were doing farmers markets and restaurants. And we just sat there and watched the members just, it was pretty wild, actually. It was like panic CSA signups. And all of a sudden we had, I think it was 140 members or so. And then we closed it, and we quickly closed it. And then we just had this flood of messages coming through. It was pretty wild. And I think a lot of people who initially did it, they'd already been at the markets. They were customers already, so really supportive. And the first little while we were delivering with boxes and doing social distancing, and then it kind of, we figured out our system more. And as everyone eased into it, just having 140 people that, instead of going to farmers markets, and we had the CSA out the back, and we spread ourselves quite thin early in the piece because we weren't sure what the best model was. And then switching to the 100% CSA, we would just go to a location, set the veggies up in crates, and everyone would come. Each location was open for, I think, an hour or so. I think one was open for 2 hours. It was our biggest. And they would pack their own veggies. We wouldn't do anything. We would just be there to chat and just to connect. And everyone brought their kids. We made sure they were always next to parks, and everyone had their dogs. And so I think we switched from this crazy, every Saturday we build our own little facility to sell out of, to, everyone coming together without this, it's still transactional. People still pay, but people aren't staring going, oh, am I going to buy that $5 bunch of carrots? They get the veggies, and as they're doing it, they communicate with you and they ask you about it. And I think just taking that action out of it, just taking that monetary exchange in that moment, and then having people come every single week, having this pre-arranged time. People, if people weren't able to come, they would always send friends. You know, it was very seldom that people would forget CSA drop. By the end of the time when we ended up wrapping up our CSA, like there were a lot of tears, and like it was really touching. Like people said how it was, you know, one of the most important parts of their week, and like how they're actually connecting with food. And I guess it was that connecting with us and seeing all of those other people there and realizing that they're part of this eating community rather than the food purchasing, even if it has a beautiful story, just being kind of oh, I'll go this and then I'll also do something else in my day, or I won't go to the farmer's market this week because I'm busy. So just that meeting people in the middle, I guess, and it not always being, you know, the consumers or the customer's always right. It was about us having an understanding that worked for everybody and a bit of give and take. And so, yeah, I think that was the, I guess, most touching aspect of the community. The presence and the tears and the how much it affected everyone when it finished made us realize how special it was building a community around food.
Yeah, we feel that knows our parts as well. It's sense of community you get with that, the community supported ag model and the closeness. Very much like Courtney said, they feel like your family. See their kids growing up, you see the change throughout a year. Yeah, it's pretty special and touching. Also, just a reminder to all of our participants and people that have joined us today, if you have any questions, if you look down the bottom, there'll be a little chat panel. So feel free to type any questions you have in there. One thing I'm thinking, so it's been 2 years since the book was published, and we're just at the beginning of another year this year. What are folks' plans for the next 12 months? Where are you looking to go with your farm, with your business, with your community? I'm going to volunteer. Courtney, thank you.
Unless you want to go first, Penny. You're the traveller. We're really excited, and I guess it's part of a learning from last year as well, like kind of alongside the whole, like the Black Lives Matter movement and the learnings that came out of that, or continue to come out of that. We're excited to be kind of partnering up with Black Duck Foods, so Bruce Pascoe's Indigenous social enterprise, and we're really, like, we feel really privileged to be getting involved with them and doing a bit of contract milling for them and seeing where that goes, and trying to assist them in any way we can in their kind of food sovereignty journey. And apart from that, we're also looking to buy our own farm. So Ian and I have been value adding grain grown by his parents who manage the family farm. But we're looking to either buy into the family farm or buy our own block nearby. So that's been a struggle and a big learning curve as well. But it feels like we're kind of getting somewhere, and we'll hopefully have something to manage ourselves in the near future. But we'll see.
Take my hat off to you, looking to buy your own farm when you've just got a toddler. So, so well done. What about yourself, Declan? So the year ahead, you've had some big changes in the last year, and where are you looking to take it going forwards?
Yeah, I guess we're kind of in this is a strange period for us because we figured out we couldn't grow in clay last winter. Now that we've scaled up and mechanized, we tried to have crops in the ground over winter, and it was just a nightmare. Yeah, as you said, heavy clay, going from a hot sandy area where we had to irrigate in winter. Yeah, we pretty much don't have to turn on the sprinklers from April through to October here anymore, which is for WA is wild. Like the soil here holds water for days and all that kind of stuff. So that there's a lot of figuring that out. I think with regards to like the model that we've moved into, I see when I kind of talk about the cooperative aspect of it, I think at the moment it's more of another business distributing for us, and I see like a lot of potential in all of the growers actually coming together, and rather than having this central spoke, which is the business who distributes, they're a box system who distributes everything, having all of us have interconnected Google Sheets and we all do our crop planning together. It's all pretty much where we can send everything through to each other. We do all of our budgeting together. We have like totally open, transparent communication, all of those aspects of the business, just so that there's like building that producer community and understanding where we're all at, so that we don't feel like, you know, because when you're farming, you spend, depends what your context is, but you do spend a lot of time isolated, and just knowing that, you know, even if you're not going to see everyone in the middle of summer because it's a bit crazy, at least you have had that face-to-face and connection during the winter time. And so that's a big thing that I'm really thinking about in terms of that model. Yeah, and just the continuous support, like check-ins with all of the other farmers and growers, you know, like call one of them once a week and say, I've started doing it at the moment, to see how they're going. So yeah, that's, I guess, not like a concrete, but more of a theoretical plan.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's very exciting, very different to trying to just grow your customer base, but growing the the producers and supporting each other through that. So can't wait to see where it goes in the year. And yourself, Penny, next 12 months.
Well, you know, next 12 months we hope to be heading to Western Australia after spending some time in New South Wales. However, I want to pick up on what Declan just talked about, because I think that the whole sort of multi-farm CSA type stuff, and particularly producer communities, are something that is really important and really growing. So we've worked with, well, I helped establish the Southern Harvest Association multi-farm produce box, which is based out of Bungendore near Canberra. But we also worked on one of the farms involved with the Prom Coast Food Collective. And both of those use, there's a online tool called Open Food Network, which I'm sure the producers are aware of. And there just seems to be a real growth in producers working together. I know Courtney's been involved in Southern Harvest for deliveries in Canberra. And I think that real growing sense of producers being able to work together from a region and support small and local food delivery systems. So now we're talking the delivery side of it rather than the production side of it, seems to be a really powerful way forward. If you look at what I've written in the book, we never really involved in our own CSA, and that was because when we started the farm, we really didn't have any local connections. We'd come from out of town, and most of our work was farmers markets, and we'd go to 3 farmers markets a week, and I have to agree with Declan how exhausting it is. But we did get involved in the multi-farm produce box, and I think it's a really strong way forward and it still builds that consumer connection as well, because you might have the delivery and you've got 20 or 30 consumers picking up at that one point. And each of the models are different, but those are 2 really good ones to look at, Prom Coast and Southern Harvest, in terms of where I think that there's going to be some changes moving forward. You know, some farms are in a position to be able to do their own CSAs and others aren't. And yeah, to me, that's my hero for the next year.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like there's heaps of potential with the that Southern Harvest model, and customers or networks from each producer feeding into each other and like helping each other out too is really beneficial. I'm excited to see where that goes.
Definitely need to look into that myself. Yeah, one of our challenges is same as Dec and the same as Courtney. It's distribution and getting to our customers. So we are quite remote, and our customer base is widespread. So yes, it makes a lot of sense working together with other food processors and growers within our region to get to the people in a cooperative way.
Mm.
All right. I'm going to ask Penny. So she's probably the most experienced in the room and has seen the most farms in her time. But can you offer some recommendations for if people are wanting to start up a small scale agroecological regenerative farming business? How would you suggest they go about starting that process?
So my first answer would always be research. And I know that seems weird. You go, who am I going to research? Just start with your friends and family, start anywhere. Start at the farmer's market, go and talk to the farmers. And people can sort of hit a few roadblocks there, but that's in terms of product. But my other, I guess my major thing, and I don't know, well, actually I do know that Declan went and volunteered on a few farms before starting his own business, but is to go out there and see what other people are doing, because it might be, you know, you want to own a farm, but you don't know if you want to grow grain or grow vegetables or be involved in fruit trees or animals. And there's, well, obviously at the moment, there's a lot of people needing assistance. There is a fairly massive shortage across Australia because of the lack of backpacker labour, but there's a lot of opportunity out there to go and experience different farms. There is the, you know, people would have heard of the woofing system, or there's also, I think it's called Help Away or something, but, you know, just start somewhere and then you'll be able to find recommendations for other farms, because not only are there different things to grow that you could be producing, there obviously, from what we've discussed today already, there's many different ways of selling and different ways to market. And traditionally, and I've worked in conventional agriculture years ago, where, you know, the cattle went to the sale yards and then they ended up somewhere, well, they ended up, you know, in Coles or somewhere, but that's not what we want. What are our opportunities for selling differently? Is it farmers markets? Is it CSAs? Is it, you know, multi-farm CSAs? Is it having people on farm? And again, obviously the book itself, if you read through that, different people are trialing different methods, and it does come down to what you do want to produce and your own personality, you know, what your other commitments are with kids. Like, we're talking about real life situations. So I would seriously recommend, if you can spend 6 months to a year just getting out there and giving it a go on different types of properties, and you get an idea for the level of labor involved, the infrastructure that's required, the marketing options, the, I guess, packaging, the legal side of it. So, you know, running a farm is running a small business. It's not running a hobby. Otherwise, it's a hobby farm.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. When I started the farm, or before we started the farm here, did that, spent time on a few other farms. Probably not as much time as I should have, but yeah. What about yourself, Dec and Courtney? Do you have anything you'd like to add to Penny's suggestions for folks looking to start out?
Yeah, I'll just kind of repeat a point Penny made, which is have your budget sorted and have spreadsheets and do the, like, it's the least sexy part. You know, you have this big, beautiful dreams and you want to change the world and you want to impact your community and all these great things that are the drivers behind what you do. And you can't let go of those because those are integral. But if it's not financially viable, it's like, it'll fail. And that's really the crux of it, is understanding it as a small business, like Penny stated. And like our budgets, we did our spreadsheets, and then things cost more. They took more time. They changed dramatically. You realize you need equipment. So just have that assumption that everything will take, like I have a friend who, as we were getting started, she goes, oh, just assume everything will take twice as long and cost twice as much. And it was probably more than that. Yeah, exactly. That was an underestimation. And so, yeah, just being cognizant of that, and also accepting that you'll unless you've run a small business before, try to get as much experience in that space, because once you're in the thick of it and you've got irrigation pipes bursting, and like if there's animals that are sick and all that kind of stuff, you want to be able to at least go and go, okay, cool, I've got an organized spreadsheet, and there's a thing on the computer that is not chaotic and that is not a natural system, which is inherently much more difficult to control. And the other one is selling like a story, not just a product. I think that's the biggest one, because you believe in this thing that you're doing, and it may be the most amazingly grown carrot on the planet that's ever been grown. But if it's, just at the farmers market and you haven't provided the backdrop to why that person should, break through and maybe pay a little bit more for that product, or come to the farmers market and get that bunch of carrots from you. Like, you have to give people a reason to connect, and just being really genuine is what we found. Like Mel with our Instagram it was amazing watching her build a community through openness, and the quote unquote brand was just being real and being open and being honest and being informative. And I think that's a key part, is knowing why you're doing what you're doing and communicating it effectively, and having that, try to write it down. And then if when you stare at that, it gets your heart racing and it gets you excited and it's concise and you can grab onto it and you can show it to people and they have the same feeling, then you kind of go from there.
Fantastic, thank you. I couldn't agree more with the you're not just selling a carrot, or in our case, you're not just selling a chicken. For us, our average chicken's about a $60 purchase. So what would stop somebody from going, look, that's $60, I can buy it, the shop's for $8. It's the story, it's the background to the product, it's how you grow it, it's the systems, and it's also then getting them to taste that product. And once they start tasting what it is that you're growing, and get that backstory, you'll find they keep coming back. So, and yourself, Courtney, you have anything else to add for the wannabe farmers that are passionate about getting out there and doing their own thing?
I like Dan's point about everything costing twice as much and taking twice as long. I need to remember that myself. But I would just suggest, like, on top of just getting out there and getting experience, as Penny says, like, that's something that we wish we could have done more of before we got cracking. But just starting a small business, just starting small and seeing where it takes you, I think is really important, and building community as you go. Because I feel like even though we're not doing as much farming right now as we like to, when we're given that opportunity, we're ready to go. We've got the community. And I think it's Chris Newman from Sylvan Aqua Farms who talks about like the importance of knowing how to market your product, know where your product is going to go before you get out. Like, it's not about knowing how to farm, it's about knowing how to market it. And I think that is, like, it's easy to learn how to farm, but it's difficult to market a product sometimes. And so just really, getting your numbers right and focusing on your marketing or your distribution or your customers or whatever, I think that's quite important.
I'll chime in there as well. I guess following on from what Courtney said, one of our big learnings is we're moving further away from resellers. So a year and a half ago, we had quite a few places that would resell our products, and we'd offer wholesale pricing, and then they'd stock it and then sell it on. Having that direct relationship with the person that is cooking and eating your product, that's where we're going. So we want to be able to basically to know and understand and have that close relationship with our eaters. So I guess that's probably been, we had that a little bit with the farmers markets, but as Dec would know, and Penny would know as well, if you get a day and it's bucketing down with rain or freezing cold or stinking hot, you go to your farmer's market and you come back home with an empty till and a full van still. So there's risks with that, and that's why one of the many reasons we've gone to the CSA. But yeah, I'll also just make note. Sorry, motorbike going past. Excuse the noise. Amita has put a few links on the chat tab there. So last year we had a chat with Open Food Network about collaboration around distribution networks. So you can see on ASA's YouTube channel there, a link to that if you'd like to see some more, as well as some links through to Southern Harvest if you're interested in their model, and to each of the farmers that are here today. Now, give us a second and I'll just scroll back and double check if we've got any questions. I've got one to Courtney about how you got involved with, it says BLM there, but if I've got this wrong, I'm guessing you mean the Black Duck Foods. Possibly.
Yeah. The reference to the Black Lives Matter movement was more about just how it like encouraged Ian and I to learn more about what it means to be farming on unceded Aboriginal land and the privilege that we have being a part of a 4th generation family farm. And so that's like really had us thinking about what we can, our responsibility in that context, and our responsibility to the Aboriginal community as well. And one of the actions that came out of that is we've started paying the rent. So 1% of our sales go towards local Bangarang organisations or groups. But with Black Duck Foods, that was just kind of lucky, actually. They approached us, which is really nice. I think they can see in our model that it's replicable in other communities. Like we've got a very small startup, cost-effective flour milling operation that could be replicated anywhere. I don't know. I guess they've approached us and we've developed a relationship from there, which has been really lovely. I hope that answers your question.
Not a problem. Add to the chat comment there if you like. Kate Jasan, apologies if I got your name wrong. We've also got a question from James, and this is probably to Courtney and to Dec. Not so much myself just yet, although I will be, but do you save your own seeds, and is that economically and practically viable for you guys?
Yeah, I'll go. We don't. No. We would like. I would love to. In the past we've grown, I don't know, 80 varieties of veggies, and a lot of them are brassicas or cucurbits or solanaceous crops. And the building a business is hard enough, let alone trying to put the pressure on yourself to then save seed at the start. I think when we worked at Old Mill Road with Kirsty and Fraser, and I think at the time Kirsty was saving some tomato, eggplant and zucchini seed. And that was it. She made the call. Those are the ones that were easy. She could isolate them. She knew how to save the seed. And like there's a lot that goes into it. You're not just on a commercial scale, you need commercial seed. And you need it to be prolific. You need to have certain traits. You can't have, 40% of that crop have an off trait and you get crop failures, or it's not true to type. And so you need to know what you're doing with seed saving. It's not just in a backyard setting, it might be okay, but when you're planting a field out, you really need to know what you're doing. And therefore at the moment, we've never saved seed. We've just made the call. We're like, one day that's something that it's a skill set that I really love to develop, and like bit by bit and incrementally, and probably never all of our crops because we grow too many varieties. But I think it's a really important aspect to food sovereignty is seed sovereignty.
Can I just jump in there, Daniel, before Courtney, because grain's a bit different, but on our vegetable side, again, there's some things that are simple to do, like tomatoes and so forth, and there's some things that are really hard to do, like pumpkins and things, like you need distance between them. But what we used to do was harvest what we could and donate them to Canberra Seed Savers, and then they would deal with the processing of it and package them up, and then they would sell it. So it was more a community contribution from the seed growing rather than putting it back into our own business. But, you know, if you're interested in that side of it, then certainly there's people out there that do want seed, but you still need to be aware that, particularly on the vegetable side of things, there's many different, I guess, things you need to know about different types of seed before you are able to save them properly.
Fantastic. Thank you, Penny. And I'm intrigued, Courtney, with yourself. I presume you guys would save a lot of your grain for replanting and some of the native grains that you're trialing with the Black Duck Foods.
Yeah, with the cereal grains, we always just sow our own seed. That's probably more of an economic decision more than anything, because, you know, you're sowing a ton at a time. Not that much, but yeah, quite a lot. But we're keen to introduce some more genetic diversity. So we've been trying to grow out some heritage varieties from the Australian Grains Gene Bank, but we've had mixed success with the mice plague and the drought and everything. And with the native grasses, we haven't been doing much growing out of grasses ourselves. Like, we've trialed a few different things, and that's all from locally collected seed, because the native grass seed market is pretty wildly expensive. But yeah, most of the harvesting of the native grass seed through Black Duck Foods is on pretty broad acre native pasture properties. I think the last harvest they did might have even been like Melbourne water kind of property. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, I've got a few other ones there. One from Jane: how do we establish a CSA? If we can give a quick summary. We could probably go for another hour or two on that topic, but anyone in the panel got a quick couple of points they can pop out?
I guess is the establishment in terms of the planning is like have then spreadsheet that and understand that output, and, you know, having consistency for those customers. They've pre-committed to you, and unlike a farmer's market model or something else where you can rock up with whatever you have, and that's okay. CSA, there's a pre-commitment, and just understanding what you're getting into when people are expecting a product. You know, there's understanding within the model. There's like, that's the whole point of the CSA. If something goes wrong, that's okay, but you have to have that planned consistency, at least on the spreadsheet, and you have to know yourself that you have the skills to be able to go forwards with that. So that's probably within establishing a CSA, is maybe not right off the bat if you're not really confident, just in case, and trialing some other models that have some more flexibility for you as the grower, so you can get some experience. And then just the story again, like people aren't used to paying hundreds of dollars for months of food in advance, so you have to bring them in, you have to explain it, you have to be clear and concise, and you have to have, you know, a website that's easy to use and a subscription system that's automated. Like, we used Zapier for basically interlinking all of our accounting software and Excel spreadsheets and our website. So people clicked on the website button, and then you use Zapier, and it has zaps, and you can interlink basically any program that you can think of. It's like simple coding for businesses. And so then the click there would take them to a page that would automate the bank payment. And as soon as that happened, it would put the thing on our back end that would then know within our QuickBooks accounting software in this many months sending out another invoice. That would all the info would then auto enter into an Excel spreadsheet, and just looking into systems so that all of a sudden you don't mess something up is probably a big part of it.
Yep.
You go, Penny.
So I agree with Declan on that whole spreadsheet side, and one of the reasons we never did a proper CSA as on the vegetable side of things is because that would have really done my head in. Even though you're using it for planting and stuff, in terms of, you know, as Declan said, you need to have had some experience. Like you wouldn't, in the vegetable context, go, okay, I'm going to go farm and do CSA. In fact, you wouldn't do it in the meat context either. From my point of view, with my marketing hat on, it would be making sure that you're using those, I guess I would say, few years of trialing what you can grow to be also collecting a consumer database, whether that's through social media, through newsletters. You need to build that contact base. But since Daniel's just started his CSA, why don't you tell us, Daniel?
Yep. I'll kick this one off by saying we did a webinar about how to start CSAs. So Amita's just put a link in there. I believe it's only open to ASA members though, which we had quite an in-depth session. But for us, really, really quick summary. Yeah, make sure you've got the customer base there. Make sure you know your business and your numbers really well. Educating and communicating with the customers in terms of, it's not, with the CSA, it's not just about the customer. It's got to work for the farmer as well. So it's really, really communicating and being completely transparent about what you're doing and what you're proposing to do, and understand the value that's within your product. So that's some really quick ones from us. Did you want to throw in one or two really quick ones there, Courtney? Because we're getting close on time and there's a few more questions.
Go for the next question. You've covered it.
Not a problem. All right, next one. Does anybody have any certifications demonstrating to your customers that you produce what you say you are? Any third-party certifications, I guess, within the group?
Yeah, so I'm going to say, which is in the book. Sorry, Courtney. We were certified humane choice and then certified organic. And the reason we originally did that was because of other producers in the area saying, well, you're doing it anyway, why don't you get certified? And that also, when we first started, we were doing more of a reseller model, like Daniel, you were talking about. And so I think in that context, it was more important when you didn't have that direct connection with your customers, for them to understand how you farm or to come onto the farm and have a look for themselves. Then I think certification is important in that context. Had we still been farming, probably would have dropped it, to be perfectly honest. And again, would have moved more towards CSA model. So I think that as long as you're open and transparent, and I guess, you know, that can be done via Instagram, like they've done at Roly Poly, or it can be done by inviting people onto your farm, or just spending the time talking to them about how you produce. So yes, we've done it. No, I don't think it's necessary, certainly not in the long term.
Yeah, we're exactly the same. We were certified with pasture raised on open fields or proof. And now that we have a relationship with every customer, so if you've got any questions about what we do or how we do it, come to the farm, have a look, or ask us. So, yeah. Quick question there from Georgie. Has anybody had any government funding or help to get them where you are today? Or have you all done it off your own backs? Nope, I think everyone's pretty much in the same boat. There's not a lot out there. It's for our small scale regen farmers. All right.
Oh, Dan, I was just going to say, I think that one of the hardest parts of that is I've gone to write a few grants and my brain just broke, and they needed all this evidence and they needed like all this procedural paperwork that we didn't have written up as a business already. It was aimed at small farmers, but the content, you would have needed someone who had a different capacity or much more time than I have during the tiny framework that grants come out. So yeah, I had like a week to fill it in. I opened it 4 times and then it disappeared. So yeah.
Now, I do recognise we are at time. So if the panel are happy to continue, I will thank everybody now for joining in. I'm happy to keep going for a few more minutes. Everyone got a thumbs up? Happy to answer a few more questions. So for those that do need to disappear now, thank you very much for joining us, but we will continue with a few more questions for a bit longer if that's all right. So we have another question here from Aileen. How would you define appropriate scales for your business? I'll throw this one to Courtney first.
Yeah, hi Eileen. This is something we've been thinking about a lot over the last year, mostly because of the impact of the drought carrying on. So there was a lot of pressure on our mill to process grain grown just by our farm, as I kind of mentioned earlier. And then with COVID, we were thinking a lot about the pressure we have on one, like we've only got one machine and one human operating, Ian. he's not just a human, he's my husband, operating the flour mill. So we felt like we were on shaky ground there. So like if Ian was to get sick with COVID or whatever, then, and I was at home looking after the kids, then we were, yeah, a bit worried about that. So we've been very small scale, real bootstrap startup phase for a while, but moving forward, we're wanting to scale up just that little bit so that we could be processing other people's grain and providing a premium to other organic growers, and also have more than one mill so that if we do have machinery breakdown, we've got a backup. And then also potentially provide employment to someone in the community as well. So it's just finding that kind of middle ground for us at the moment where there's not so much pressure on us doing everything, but yeah, we can scale out to diversify our grain. And yeah, I don't know if that answers the question. Do you have a perspective on this, Deck?
Yeah, I think those points are really good about like it's context appropriate resiliency. And also if you're going to employ people, know that you are happy employing people and that you have the capacity to be a manager, which is a really big thing. That when we employed people, we did okay, you know, but we threw ourselves in the deep end. And I think another part, I'm going to be like the most boring broken record, do your budget and work backwards. It's just like, I do everything that way now. We kind of did it at first, but I think that start small, like Courtney said earlier, figure out how everything functions in your context specifically, because you're going to have different costs to another producer producing the exact same product in a different location with a different background and different, you know, they might be on family land, you might be paying a bunch of rent, you might have repayments that are different. So just, I think scale is about your very, very specific context and also who you are as an individual. If you like, you know, big machines and you can't imagine farming without a big machine, like that's okay, but know that, put that into the budget, see if it's going to work, and then work backwards from there again. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
Can I go the land use scale and the in the context of small scale regenerative farms is, and I know we've been talking about here market gardening and flower, which are different to animals, and you need to be appropriately resting land. So for us, rather than say, let's say increase the number of beef cattle or sheep on the land, it would be if we needed to, going back to Declan's budget, if we needed to look for more income in different enterprises to make everything stack up, we'd look at stacking enterprises rather than, oh, we need, to double the beef herd or double the sheep herd. You need to know what your land will carry, and you need to be managing that land appropriately, or you won't have a business because your land won't be supporting the farming that you're trying to do. Yep. So just the land version of scale.
And yeah, I guess reiterating what just about everyone said, scale is a very, very personal thing. So it's got to work for you, your family, your context, and what you're about. So it's speaking from a new farm, like we're first gen farmers. So we've got our farm that we're still currently basically paying off. We've also got an abattoir on farm that we need to run. So we need to make sure that for us, our scale is appropriate to cover the fixed costs that you have in running the business we do. So we have costs with licensing. If we add together rates, insurances, and licensing, we're probably pushing up to 25,000 a year. So obviously you can't only sell 1,000 chickens in a year to cover that cost. So scale has to work for you, but it also got to cover your bills. So, all right. Now, other questions before we wrap it up? So bear with me for a second. Has anybody had any experiences where they haven't been able to sell products during a season? So I guess this is, if I'm wrong here, Ollie, correct me, but I'm guessing this is where you might have a lot of products and you either can't get it to the market or you just can't sell it. How have you guys managed those situations if you've come across it?
I wouldn't say a huge glut, but with meat, because our concentration was on farmers market, I won't just say a season, but week to week, we had to make sure we were licensed to store meat, and we had to make sure that we had appropriate labeling and so on. So with meat, obviously you can take that to frozen. Obviously fresh vegetables and market gardening is a whole other thing. You can't often freeze a lettuce and make it work at the other end. But that's one of the reasons. And again, if you look in the book, we used to do value adding. So if we, let's say, had a zucchini glut and we didn't sell them all at the market, then yes, we would pickle them or chutney them or whatever. But you are talking about different enterprises, each with their own costs that you need to work out whether you're going to make money on, because it might be great to have used the zucchinis, but if it's taken you more time and effort and cost in producing that, then maybe it is better to feed it to the pigs.
Yeah, we had aftermarkets. We have some friends who grow mushrooms in like a urban mushroom farm, and they had food bank WA come past every Monday and collect their excess. And so we just finished farmers markets and then went to their place, put any excess in the cool room, and then we just didn't have any wastage that way. So like, rather than it went to get cooked for meals for people in need. And I think those models, if you can figure them out and make it so that, there's a lot like Oz Harvest and Food Bank, they drive around a lot of suburbs and they go to a lot of places. And like it was really like simple and accessible, and they make it easy, and that's the whole like kind of their business model. So that was a really great way to get rid of excess.
What about yourself, Courtney? Have you had any instances where you haven't been able to get product moved to market?
I mean, that's where our sheep come in handy. So we holistically manage the sheep, but if there's any grain that can't be moved, that's not selling, like for a while there, like our triticale is quite new and a lot of people aren't familiar with triticale. So an option for us there, if we can't find a valuable market for it, is to just fatten up some lambs with it. So it's like, it's not something we rely on, but it is something that it doesn't go to waste in that sense. And when we're cleaning grain as well, all the wastage from the cleaning, that can just go to the livestock too. So win-win for us.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we've had a little bit of struggling to move some of our poultry products on occasion. Just recently, actually, it's been frames. that are difficult to move. I know down south, frames sell really well from regen poultry farmers because there's probably a lot more chicken soups made because it's a bit cooler. But North Queensland has not done as much. So we've given frames in the past to our local Meals on Wheels quite a few times. So it's helping feed people in need. And with our relaunch of our CSA, every returning CSA member that we've given them a couple of frames to say thanks. So give them back to the community. Instead of having them go past date and go to waste, they are frozen. We do get a 12-month shelf life, but we'll give them to the CSA folks and they can turn them into great food for their families. So now let me quickly run back through the questions. I think we've just about covered everything. One real last one there to Courtney as well from Amy saying, would you do a lamb CSA at all? Would you do CSA using your lamb or sheep?
Yeah, I just replied, but we're definitely interested in direct marketing our lamb, but just finding the right butcher is our challenge at the moment. So, and it's not something we're prepared to do on farm or anything like that. So we would have to develop a relationship with the right butcher, and it'd have to line up with the abattoirs and all that. So it's a bit more of a tricky one for us.
Fantastic. I think that has covered all of the questions. So I guess as a quick wrap up, if everyone wants to turn their cameras on quickly and give us all a bit of a wave. And yeah, really like to thank everybody for joining us and for our panelists for coming along tonight. And yeah, keep an eye on Facebook and Instagram for our next Solidarity session. And if you're not a member of AFSA's, we'd encourage you to join and help us continue to keep these sort of things coming and sharing with you folks. So thanks all and good night.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.